Ex-friends of a serial killer, what were they like? I wasn't friends with him, but he wanted to be friends with me. I moved to another town when I was 10. It was a neighborhood. My neighbors were friendly, so were people on the street. My next door neighbors and the neighbor across the street, Bill. When I was 10, my house burned to the ground, and when I was crying out front with the firefighters and insurance workers, Bill approached me and talked with me. He was gentle, kind, an older man with grey silver hair and a beard to match. He told me he knew I was often alone at home because my mom works, and told me I was allowed to come over at any time. He even mentioned having games to play and movies to watch. I told him thank you. As I grew older, I didn't pay much attention to Bill. I never went over, but every day I walked home, Bill was out doing something in this lawn or garage. He had a bike and often had a younger gentleman in his 40s who visited a lot. One night Bill's packing up a huge U-Haul by 11 p.m. on a weekday. I was 13 then. A month or so passed. We found out from one of our neighbors that she might have done something bad. Neighbor finds Bill on America's Most Wanted. This woman is a stay-at-home mother who doesn't believe in the outside world products and stuff. Tons of free time. She said it looked exactly like him, so much so that the next time she saw him outside she told him so. She casually went up the man and told him she saw someone who looked exactly like him on America's Most Wanted. The very single next day is the day I saw them moving out at 11 p.m. When I asked what the crimes were, she told me, looking sick, that he and his brother have been kidnapping young girls, raping them and milling and throwing them out as they move separately or together to find another spot. They've been wanted for decades. That's less a bullet dodged and more an entire cruise missile. This is straight out of the movie Disturbia. I'm glad you never went over. Holy hell though, your other neighbor is stupid for saying anything. I dated someone that looked exactly like a famous serial killer, and I was scared to even mention that, and they definitely weren't the same person. Which serial killer? Edmund Kemper. He was tall like him as well. Deleted. That movie is underrated. If I was her, I wouldn't have confronted the guy about it. Yeah, she proper messed that up. Probably just complete disbelief, or didn't even contemplate that it could actually be him. Sounds like she wasn't the brightest bulb in the box. They literally even tell you on all those shows, do not approach this person, contact law enforcement immediately, etc. It's probable that the thought that it was him didn't even cross her mind. Just that he looked similar. It sounds like something clicked when he moved out in such a hurry. Nah, she dumb. My uncle got caught because they play America's Most Wanted in Ontario, and a soccer mom from the girls' team he coached saw it. She just called in. Karen may have done one thing right in her life. Was he ever caught? Edit, not the Bill op mentions. I was mistaken. Pretty sure that's not Bill. The op was referring to a serial killer who targeted young girls, afterwards leaving the area. This William targeted prostitutes within a single county. I did a quick search and only found him, so I just assumed it was him. Thanks for pointing it out. Any idea who the Bill op mentioned is? No clue. I think it's almost certain Bill in this case would be an assumed name. If he's moving around from place to place and he knows he's wanted, he sure as hell won't be going by the same name, and the lady who spoke to him about it probably would have been much more cautious if he shared the same name as a known serial killer who looked like him. Probably not, since he likely never existed. Sounds made up. Supposed to be killing them, right? at the end. 'Cause I'm 5 minutes into searching into what in milling someone is. Milling is also a type of grinding, as in a flour mill. Maybe I didn't want to know that. I think it's an autocorrect for murdering. Most likely, but possibly not. It's what I figured _Sue_. It could be mill, similar to a puppy mill but for human trafficking. Either it's a typo or it was what he meant, because one of the meanings of milling is crushing or grinding something in milling machine, which is infinitely more disturbing. Still want to know, was he ever caught? Flushed. Honestly, I'm so glad you're okay. I'm thankful to my parents for reminding me over and over as a kid to never get too amicable with strangers, no matter how nice or friendly they seem. Were they caught? Can you find me a picture or link to this person? Man, she should have reported it to the police instead of telling the guy. They could have possibly caught them. Is he even arrested? Who was he? Why the fuck would she warn him instead of just calling the cops on him? Does a mass murderer count? He was a jerk. His wife was my friend and she started slowly telling me a few things about him. They came to our home for some gatherings we held, and he was simply off and very controlling of her social life. When several of us reached out to her, she happily accepted our help to get her out of the marriage and into safety. Soon after, he showed up at my door one day demanding money, which I did not give him. He left angry. A few months later, he was evicted from his rental in the next town over and came back into our town, hell-bent on killing everyone who helped her and who was associated with the rental situation and another circumstance that he was mad about. I was not home that night, thankfully. He hunted down and killed 5 people, one of whom was a friend of mine. He committed suicide when the police had him cornered. That was nearly 30 years ago. Andy, my friend, I still miss you and your goofy grin. The line at the end got me crying face. Yeah, it's still good to miss them. Just because someone is a terrible person does not mean you shouldn't forgive them. Either you misread some of that, or you were simply making 2 different points. I don't know. Edit. Nice job everyone. Downvoting the guy for misreading. Just great. IDIDNT explained that well. I guess I was trying to say that even though his friend was a terrible person who would have potentially killed him, he still misses him, so I guess that means he forgives him. Oh okay, so I think you misread that. He was saying his friend was murdered, not that the murderer was his friend. The he committed suicide was referring to the murderer, not his friend. Sorry I pointed this out. I don't mean to be rude. Oh, I did misread that, thanks for pointing that out. No problem. I'm sorry that you lost your friend. RIP Andy. That's dark. Oh my fucking god. Sorry for your loss. Single quote opening parenthesis. Thank you. The town created a memorial statue for Andy. He was a well-known local and a great guy. I live in a different town now but still stop off there on occasion to see his memorial. Regardless of how much time had passed, you're a good friend to still remember him and stop occasionally to give him thought. I'm sorry that you lost your friend. RIP Andy. Mate, that last line makes my heart hurt. Hunted down and killed 5 people. I assume it was separate incidents. In that case he's a serial killer. As mass murder is when you kill a large number of people at the same time, e.g. using a bomb. Yes, killings took place in 3 towns that night. each victim known and located. But still, all in one night. I assume it was separate incidents. In that case, he's a serial killer. No. A serial killer requires a cool-down period between murders. One night of mayhem makes him a spree killer. Oh yeah. Anyway, he wasn't a mass murderer. That's true. Where are you from? I'm sorry for your loss. Wow. Sorry to hear that. Thanks for sharing. Fuck, that's awful. Rest in peace, Andy. I'm glad the wife got out of the marriage, but I'm also really sad about all the people he has killed. RIP Andy. This is obviously fake LMFAO. Does a mass murderer count? It doesn't, but I'm sorry for your loss. Just wow dude lol. Not me, but my old boss used to babysit Carla Homolka for several years before she was old enough to not need a babysitter, but she would still come over to her house and hang out with her kids all the time. She said she was a sweet girl and that her kids were very close friends with her. She also knew Paul Bernardo because of Carla, but she never mentioned him much other than she believed he brainwashed her into aiding him with all the murders. She is a monster. I can't believe she's allowed custody of her kids. Like, sorry, you already raped and murdered one child you were supposed to protect, that's all 3 strikes. They raped and almost killed Jane Doe twice as well. But Carla was the one who groomed her, who lured her, brought her there, and harassed her via phone after she was arrested. She's a fucking POS who lied and hired to get the deal of a lifetime. She's a cunt. If hell exists, she belongs in the deepest levels. I hope at the very least the media keeps exposing her so she can't hide behind a name change. Who's Jane Doe? I searched it and it showed that fake alias thing. She was a young teen that Carla met at work. They gave her booze and drugged her on 2 different occasions, and once they called 911, but they managed to resuscitate her so everything was fine. They probably didn't release her actual name during the court proceedings, hence why she's being called Jane Doe. Yeah, really, her own sister of all people. Anyone who doubts that she participated willingly need only see the video of how she asks when the investigators bring her back to their house and get her to show them things. Not only willingly, she was delighted to give her sister to Paul, and then dress up and act like her while having sex with him on camera, face vomiting. She didn't give a single fuck that Tammy died, and yeah, anyone who can do that to their younger sister, oldest sibling here, and I can't fucking even, can absolutely do it to their kids. What kind of person decided to reproduce with her? Not only did she dress like Tammy, she called herself Tammy, and it was less than a month after they killed her sister. And then she married her lawyer's brother and has, I think, 3 kids with him. I have read they have split up, but those poor kids. Living in Canada, there's no way they won't learn about their mom's past. How will that be explained that she was brainwashed and she didn't mean it? She is truly the epitome of evil. I hope that lawyer is disbarred. He clearly has terrible judgment. I don't know anything about the case. Why was she able to go free? Took a deal where she would give all the evidence against Paul. This is before they found the footage to show she was fully in on it, but they already gave her the deal by that point. Do they always have to honor deals like this? I'm curious, because isn't law enforcement allowed to lie to people in order to get to the truth? Do they always have to honor deals like this? I'm curious, because isn't law enforcement allowed to lie to people in order to get to the truth? Yes. Same thing happened with another female conspirator. Look innocent enough to get a deal because they think you'll be aiding to put that real monster away and then enjoy your reduced sentence. They probably got it on paper first. Okay, that sucks. Thanks for your answer. By memory, her lawyer's brother or something like that. She is fucked up doing that to her own sister. She drugged her with the meds she stole from the veterinary office she worked at, and her young sister drowned in her own vomit in front of them before she and her husband raped her and then dismembered her. That's no excuse level fucked in the head. I don't know why the killing of her sister gets glazed over or skipped altogether. I feel her sister deserved just as much justice as Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. But you rarely hear it brought up. I never understood why. Doesn't it help any that a really scummy director made a movie about the events that painted her as just another victim? It's infamous for the fact Misha Collins plays Paul but was roped in under the false impression the story was fictional and disowned the movie when he found out it wasn't. How do you not know if you're playing a factual famous serial killer or a fictional character? Hut. Misha is American, and at the time the movie was made the case wasn't well known outside of Canada, and nobody on the production that knew it was based on a true story tried hard to get everyone on the same page. A lot of seedy shit like the director complimenting his rape scenes as sexy went down too. He didn't find out until they were promoting it, and a news reporter blindsided him with an accusation of exploiting real murders. IDK, I'm Canadian, so it's pretty well known here, but maybe it didn't get much attention elsewhere and he'd never heard of it. What I wanna know is who the hell thinks that's a good fictional story. That's some human centipede level shit. What drew him in was less the violent acts and more that when he thought Paul was fictional, the idea of playing a villain that was a completely normal and successful pillar of society on the surface while being such a monster behind closed doors fascinated him. Sort of the two-faced nature of the role. The one with Laura Prepon. I think the movie made her look like a monster and she was very deceptive. No sympathy for the devil. Isn't that the same movie where Laura Prepon plays Color? I can't believe she's allowed custody of her kids either, and to top it off I heard she works in a school. She's just as bad as Paul. She should be locked up, but she threw Paul under the bus and took the plea deal. Female pride figure. Don't know, I am downvoted. You know well men would never got the custody in a similar case. Homolka managed to marry someone and create spawn. Terrifying and sad. The woman drugged, raped and murdered her own very young sister. She was also supposedly discovered going around schools near kids and stuff. She creeps me out big time. Her casual attitude about the whole thing is messed up too. Until my dying day I will always be convinced she killed those girls. Bernardo raped dozens of women both before and after, but the two that Carla was involved with he killed while she just watched. I don't buy that. She is a monster and the day she dies will be a good one. One of my friends in high school had younger cousins who lived in another town. His cousins went to school with Homolka's kids. I was surprised to hear that she just gets to live a normal life after committing heinous crimes. I was surprised she was even allowed near that school in Montreal. Canada is known for allowing monsters to get away with stuff. Do they allow their kids to play with her kids? I'd ostracize them tbh. Paul Bernardo used to work with my best friend's mother and picked up her daughter best friend's mom from school often. Fuck Carla Homolka. I've been in codependent relationships where I embarrassed the shit out of myself to be with an abusive guy. Literally called him countless times crying, ultimate cringe. But if he wanted to rape and murder children I'd fucking tell on him so goddamn fast the Flash would get whiplash. Not an excuse. I know people who've run into her since she got out and have said she's very clearly completely fucked in the head. I watched Carla and blown away by how evil she was. Can't believe she has a family and is free. I'm from the Niagara area. The fact that my tax money paid for her schooling after she got out makes me sick. If anyone doesn't know her, this is an excellent watch. https://m YouTube.com watch V equals UGRPY0KWMNM. Never heard of them. Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka, husband and wife, are probably Canada's most notorious serial killers. They murdered her younger sister and kidnapped, tortured and murdered 2 other teenage girls in the early 90s. Bernardo was also the Scarborough rapist who assaulted at least 20 women in the 80s and early 90s. Homolka claimed she was abused and brainwashed by Bernardo and made a plea deal, after which videotapes they had made of their crimes surfaced that had previously been hidden by Bernardo's lawyer. But because of the plea deal, she got out of prison in 2005. Bernardo is incarcerated for life. There's a great series by Stephanie Harlow on YouTube if you'd like to learn more. Carla was super manipulative and Paul was just evil. There is also a really great episode of the podcast Canadian True Crime on Bernardo. Charming, had lots of friends. I remember sitting on the school bus thinking I should try to be more like him. He was always smiling and girls would flirt with him. About 8 to 10 years after that, he was arrested along with another guy his age for the burglary, rape, and murder of a very old woman and her dog. I was gonna say serial killer means more than one, but fuck that guy who kills an old woman and a dog. Well, from what their detectives put out, and this was over 20 years ago, there are other similar murders to this one, but no evidence on scene because a crowbar was used. No joke. That's stupid, but honestly it doesn't surprise me for 1990s detectives. Well, Detective Harvey, this looked exactly like 6 other murders in the area except a crowbar was used in the other ones. Single quote. Good observation, Detective Oswald. This has to be a separate murderer or a copycat case solved. Single quote. In fairness, it doesn't matter what they think he did, it matters what they're confident they can prove he did. Exactly. They have to be able to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. Habeas corpus. That's not what habeas corpus means. Reasonable doubt means that for a conviction to be carried, the prosecution must provide strong enough proof that the suspect was guilty that a reasonable observer would not doubt the verdict. Habeas corpus means that an individual must have the right to trial, cannot be held indefinitely by the police without being charged for anything. It has nothing to do with burden of proof, just that you cannot hold people without just cause. Habeas corpus wouldn't even come into play here since he's already being held for another crime and being charged for a new one. It implies he has the right to retrial in the case of a conviction, but that says nothing about extra cases being tried for. Now back to my hunch. My uncle was recently featured on a CBS real crime show thingy. My favorite quote from his case was, "So we knew exactly who the murderer was. We just had to prove it." That's stupid, but honestly it doesn't surprise me for detectives. FDFY. Is there also a Detective Lee somewhere in that story? Serial killer equals more paperwork. All that matters to them is they got M. Watch BuzzFeed Unsolved sometime. A distributing amount of the cases boiled to it was never solved because the investigators were completely incompetent. Even the motherfucker from Kick-Ass spared the dog. Even better question is, who rapes and then murders an old woman and her dog? Old woman and a dog, 2 people. Technically you need to kill 3 people, so not yet. Somehow killing the dog seems like the worst part. I know what you mean. Serial killer actually means a person who kills 3 person or more. He raped an old lady. What the fuck? Maybe he raped the dog. Oh okay, that makes more sense. He liked it rough. I'm so sorry. Stop. I promise. I'm done. Pretty common here in South Africa. Why is your country so violent? Criminals run the country and the majority vote them back in every time. Crime is everywhere, especially for old people, as they are easiest targets, unfortunately. If I had to name the real reasons, I would probably get called racist, traitor, etc. That is really sad. Thanks for answering. Case study for other countries. Sick fuck who rapes a dog. Near where I live, the police stopped a guy being attacked by a large dog in the middle of the street. Turns out that the dog wasn't attacking him, the bastard was raping the poor dog. Colby. Lol, I wouldn't know as I didn't actually knew the guy and it's been a while, but I remember discussing it that he was a mental case. Now there was a story on Reddit years ago about a father or stepfather suspecting or knowing their kid was sexually abusing their dog called Colby. I now can't get that joke Blink-182 song "We Wanna Fuck a Dog in the Ass" out of my head. Thanks. And her dog. Yes, you read that correctly. Yes, as bad as you think. Oh wow. That's some next level aggression the guy had welled under the surface there. Holy shit. I was debating on whether or not to joke at the phrasing, then I read this. Edit clarification. Yes, from what they printed, the dog was messed with too. I'm not one for strong language, but this is one of those rare instances that might actually warrant something. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever. What the actual fuck? Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Bro, if they did a show about the town I live in, it would halt the damn world. It's so bad here, they told Live PD to leave because it made us look so bad. What town? So I can look it up. Edit, is it Gary, Indiana? Do you have more stories? Like seriously, your town sounds like the craziest shit ever. Poor dog was raped and murdered. And burglarized. Was that in K90s? No. That is sad. BC, then there are at least 2 monsters that did the same thing. Sounds like the case on Mindhunter when they found the old woman brutally beaten and dog killed, and then the next time the guy attacked again, he killed the woman and dog. Different time frame but sounds similar. And that's a true story, which is fucking horrific. John Wick has entered the chat. There was a killer on Mindhunter that did that. It was the first season. What kind of monster would rape an old woman's dog? Exclamation mark. Wait, he also raped the dog. 99% of these replies are about him raping the dog. This seems more like superficial charm thing. He seems like he was psychopath. I really hope the dog isn't included in the rape portion. The way they replied earlier makes me think yes, sad face.